please visit my website, programtokill.net. Go to plans and prices for even more exclusive information. You can also support me now on Patreon. Add me on TikTok. And leave a like and comment.
The modern age of mass murder began just over 20 years ago, with the grisly discovery of the battered, bloody bodies of 8 young student nurses in their South Chicago apartment. They had been stabbed, strangled, ravaged systematically over a period of hours by this man, a monster named Richard Speck. Senseless and cold-blooded, it left the nation in shocked disbelief. But just 2 weeks later, it happened again. Charles Whitman, who after killing his wife and mother climbed the bell tower of the University of Texas, armed to the teeth. 90 minutes later, 12 people lay dead, 30 others wounded, until finally police sharpshooters brought him down. At the time, it was called the most savage one-man rampage in the history of American crime. It was still just the beginning. In what police later called the worst one-day slaughter in U.S. history, 21 men, women, and children were cut down at a McDonald's restaurant in Southern California. It was in July 1984. 15 more people were wounded. SWAT teams helped the horrified onlookers, finally killing the gunman, James Uberty. His wife later said he had left home that day with a pistol, a shotgun, and a rifle, telling her he was going hunting for humans.
The one with the red bike was the first one almost to escape, but he died first. Then the other 2 died and fell off the bike. And then when I saw them get killed, I thought I was going to get killed, so I ran to the post office.
Another human hunter, Pat Sherrill of Edmond, Oklahoma, wiped out 14 fellow postal workers before killing himself in August 1986. They called it Crazy Pat's Revenge because he had been reprimanded the day before for poor job performance.
I seen one of my friends hit the floor, had blood coming out.
By causing the crash of PSA Flight 1771 last year, David Burke may have taken more lives. But when it comes to terror and violence, no killer has more notoriety than Charles Manson.
The occult. According to evidence, some of the most bizarre and heinous crimes in recent history may have been rooted there. In 1977, there was New York's Son of Sam murders. Henry Lee Lucas, perhaps the most prolific serial murderer in the United States history, who claims to have murdered several hundred women over a 25-year period. The McMartin Preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, associated with child abuse. And most recently, California's so-called Night Stalker, accounting for nearly 20 deaths on the West Coast. All of these have had links to Satanism or devil worship. Sandy Gallant is a police officer with the San Francisco Police Department, and she has seen it. And Dr. Alfred Kudley is a psychiatrist who is also a consultant to the L.A. County Superior Court, joins us from our Burbank studios, and he has too. But Dr. Kudley, this litany of crime I've described, does that exaggerate the phenomenon, or is it bigger than we would dare expect?
Allegedly of child abuse, 6-year-old Lisa Steinberg, like no other victim before her, got this country's attention. And that's an indictment of our society. Because each year in this country, an estimated 4,000 children die of abuse or neglect. Well, tonight, we're going to tell Lisa's story in a way you haven't seen before. We'll take you to the block where she lived and inside her apartment building. We've spoken to the neighbors who tried to help and to total strangers who sensed that she was in danger. And all week, people have been asking, how did the system fail Lisa? John Stossel's report has some answers.
This is the story of a child's short life gone terribly wrong, of neighbors asking themselves, what could we have done? And of a city faced with the question, whose child was this?
Her name was Lisa. She was 6 years old. Yesterday, she was buried, apparently a victim of brutal beatings. It was a blow to the head that killed her. The man and woman she called her parents, they weren't her parents, have been charged with murder. Her neighbors are grieving.
There's something different when a child meets with tragedy. She never had a chance.
Never had a chance to experience what the world had to offer.
Lisa lived on this quiet street in New York's Greenwich Village. This was her apartment building. It's a small building, only 7 other families. It was Lisa's home for 6 years. She lives here in this apartment on the 3rd floor. There's only one other apartment on this floor, and the neighbor who lives here, Vicki Poland, says she knew there was trouble in that apartment.
There was apparent violence. We heard it. The tenants heard it.
What they heard was fighting, repeated fights between the man and woman who'd been living in this apartment for some 15 years. Joel Steinberg practiced criminal law from the apartment. His specialty was drug cases. He's 46. Hedda Nussbaum is 45. She worked at a publishing house editing children's books. She also wrote books for children. This book she dedicated to the man she lived with. It says, "To Joel, my everyday inspiration." And it wasn't just the next-door neighbor who knew that Hedda and Joel were having problems. Sound travels easily down the stairwell and down the air shafts on either side of the building. 3 floors below, Joan Bonanno says she couldn't help hearing
slapping, hitting, screaming, yelling, brawls, all hours of the night. I have seen Hedda beat up so she looks like meat. I have seen him take her from being a beautiful woman from 13 years ago when I moved in to being an old, gray-haired, disfigured rail of a woman. And that's what she looks like now.
We called the police. And they came. And then they left. And then it would happen again. You know, there was a pattern.
The neighbors say that between them, they must have called the police more than a dozen times over the years. Police records for this year show only one call, an anonymous one that came in on October 6th, less than a month before Lisa died. That night, 2 policemen entered the apartment house and took the stairs to the 3rd floor. Police say Joel Steinberg said, "I'm a lawyer, I know my rights," and refused to let them in. But they persisted. They called for a sergeant. The sergeant insisted he be allowed into the apartment, and Steinberg backed down. The police went inside and talked to Hedda Nussbaum, but she refused to press charges. That made it tough for the police. It came down to a judgment call.
If we have a clear case of an indication of a felony has been committed, that is a broken leg, threat of a gun, we will place the person under arrest. Barring any other serious physical injury, and it's defined in the law, like a prolonged, protracted impairment of the bodily organs, that is a definite area where we have to get more decisions from the court.
The police had come in response to a complaint about spouse abuse. Several years ago, social workers came here in response to a complaint about possible child abuse. Neighbors had called because they feared the screams meant that Lisa might be in danger as well as Hedda.
Or maybe a slap, that ain't nothing. But sexual abuse, or child in danger, definitely.
In this city, there are more than 60,000 reports of child abuse every year. Investigators like Ace Alvarado do respond to all complaints within hours, even those telephoned in anonymously.
Don't worry, I don't bite nobody.
They're trained to spot child abuse, and they're expected to use their best judgment in examining the child and evaluating the family situation.
In Lisa's case, the records show that the social workers came here twice. Standard procedure would have meant that they talked to Lisa and examined her. But in both cases, the complaints were dismissed as unfounded. Again, it's a judgment call, and no help for Lisa.
This welfare person did come and interviewed me and interviewed, I think, some other people in the building. And that was that.
On the 1st floor of this building, by coincidence, lives a colleague of ours, 2020 producer Anna Riesna.
There's been a sense of a time bomb in this building. We've been waiting for it to go off. No one expected it to go off with the little girl. We thought Hedda would be killed. And we were afraid for her.
The police say that the one call they got was an anonymous call.
Joel is a scary guy.
At first, people in this building felt horrible, but now many of you are angry.
We feel terrible. We feel angry. Maybe we didn't do enough, but at least we did something. But it never led anywhere.
Now, school is a place where abuse is sometimes detected. What happened in Lisa's case? She went to school. Did her teacher notice anything? Again, there were suspicions, but no action. Lisa was seen in school with bruises. These photographs, obtained by 2020, were taken in her first-grade classroom 2 weeks before she died. New York state law requires teachers to report suspected cases of child abuse, but no report was made about Lisa. Again, it was a judgment call.
A neighbor, someone in the building said, Lisa's teacher has blood on her hands.
Oh, I think that's terrible. That's an awful thing to say. First of all, she's not trained to spot child abuse. The child did not. She saw a bruise once. And I think that to make an accusation of that sort, it's just outrageous. It's wrong.
2 days after this photograph was taken in the classroom, another missed opportunity for help. A toll taker on the New York State Thruway saw Lisa crying, apparently frightened, as Joel Steinberg fished in his pocket for money to pay the toll.
She had this big bruise, like a fresh one on her forehead. It was still like reddish a little bit.
Sharon Listing took the initiative. She alerted state police, who stopped Steinberg's car at the next toll barrier. But he talked his way out of trouble, and they allowed him to continue on his way.
There was apparently no reason to believe at that time that there was anything other than a man traveling with his child.
Once again, it was a judgment call.
There were several windows of opportunity to save that child. You know, the police who saw her on the highway, the police officers who were here 3 weeks ago, the child welfare agency who came in and did an investigation. The neighbors at least did something. We may not have done enough, but the neighbors are the ones that acted.
Cases like this always make people say the authorities should have done much more. They should have made repeated surprise visits to the apartment. They should have taken off Lisa's long-sleeve clothing to look for bruises. When they saw that Hedda appeared beaten, they should have forcibly removed Lisa from the apartment right then. And in retrospect, sure, they should have. It might have saved her. But there's a conflict between our wish to protect children and our wish for privacy. How far do we want the police to go? Suppose that tonight they came to your house and said, we're going to examine your children, strip off their clothes. Do we want to create a bureaucracy of family police who come to our homes and make sure we're being good parents?
That's not the answer. The answer somehow is to be found, first and foremost, in neighborhood, neighborliness.
Forrester Church, a minister with a special interest in family problems, says the answer is for neighbors and friends to contact authorities as a group.
And we've got to have the courage to act, but we won't act alone. We need to act together.
And you think something good will come out of this?
It may be that this little girl who died will manage to lead us to reflect more deeply upon our responsibilities, social responsibilities, as neighbors to one another. That line in the Bible, am I my brother's keeper? The answer is yes. And we cannot say, if someone else is doing an abusive job of it, that that's okay, it's their kid. Because it's not their kid, it's the world's kid.
Lisa's friends and neighbors thought she was adopted, but it turns out that she wasn't. Joel Steinberg obtained her, apparently, by lying to her 19-year-old mother, who wanted to give her up for adoption.
Mixed as to...
The mother, Michelle Launders, now says Steinberg told her he was a lawyer representing a couple that wanted to adopt Lisa, and that he would give Lisa to them.
He never did. Instead, he kept her and brought her here.
4 years later, he obtained another child. 16-month-old Mitchell was also found in the apartment, tethered to a chair. But there were no signs that Mitchell had been beaten. Lisa's natural mother went to court earlier this week to claim Lisa's body. The court had to answer a question that society had never asked when Lisa was alive. Whose child was this? Joel Steinberg's, Hedda Nussbaum's, Michelle Launders? The court gave the body to Michelle for burial. And on Lisa's street, friends and neighbors left tributes outside her apartment building's door. Flowers, poems, and notes.
Dear Lisa, we love you and miss you very much. May your sweet love live in our hearts forever.
You know, so many people had suspicions. Child welfare and the thruway police and the city police, if only somehow they had coordinated, something might have been done.
I think people may want to know what the status is of Steinberg and Hedda Nussbaum now.
Both are in jail, and reportedly she will not say a bad word about him, says he's terrific.
You know, when you talk about battered women, and this is the case of a battered woman, people say that this is rather typical, that there is such humiliation, such degradation, that they don't attack the person who has attacked them. And by the way, the prosecution may not continue to press murder charges against her. There's going to be 30 days of psychiatric evaluation.
In hopes that she will really then say what did happen.
Well, we've not heard the last of this case. Let it make a difference if it can with other children.
I would hope so. Speak up.
Thank you, John.